welcome to the first episode of Strictly Education. I am your host, Dr. Tahira. At Strictly Education, we are committed to bringing the best and the brightest minds in public education leadership, as well as thought partners to identify issues and trends in education. But we're not just focused on issues and trends, we're focused on solutions. So today, I'm sitting here with Dr. Meisha Porter.
Yes.
Extraordinaire, former Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education, where you led 1.1 million students, nearly 1,800 schools during the most challenging time in our history, because you know we're young.
Yes,
Okay?
honey, yes.
Yes. In our history, the health crisis, the pandemic, and you were charged to open school. Many of us watched you on TV. We were rooting for you. We were celebrating you. Why? Because I saw someone who looked like me, who was taking on such a monumental task and was doing it well. That's you.
Thank you, sis.
That is you. Do you know how many times I hear your name in rooms where you're not sitting, and people are celebrating you, people are acknowledging you and what you did for New York City?
Thank you.
It was your assignment.
Yes, it was.
It was your divine assignment. You were placed there for a reason and for that season. Who is Dr. Meisha Porter?
Oh my gosh. You know, it's so funny that you start with the professional story, but I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a cousin. Like, I'm all of those things before I am the things connected to my professional story. And honestly, all of those things prepared me for my professional story. Like, I, grew up was born in Far Rockaway, grew up in South Jamaica, moved to the South Bronx, but always had people who saw me. You know, we sat here before we started officially and talked about seeing each other.
Right.
I always had people who saw something in me that I didn't always see in myself. But, I am a family member. I'm a friend. I'm a mother and a sister. And I think the heart of that for me informs my leadership.
Yeah.
Because I don't show up leading as just Dr. Porter or the Chancellor or the superintendent or the president and CEO. I show up as a leader who is your sister who's leading, your mother who's leading, your wife who's leading, your friend who's leading. And I think people connect to those parts of me, right? Because it is hard to connect to position.
Correct.
But it's easy to connect to a person.
Absolutely.
So I am all of those things in everything that I do.
And you do it unapologetically.
Absolutely.
You do it intentionally. But even though you are an extraordinary woman,
Thank you.
leadership is tough. I know that. I'm a fellow leader. I'd never led a school district as large as yours, but I do know the role of a leader is tough.
Yeah.
You led during, again, the most challenging time in our history. What sustained you, or who sustained you?
Well, not only a leader, a woman, a Black woman. And I tell people all the time that when things are really hard, people call a woman. And when things are impossible, they call a Black woman.
That's right.
And so what sustained me during that leadership moment was, first, women across the country, women locally, you as one of them, who were lifting me up when I saw them and when I didn't see them. The other thing that sustained me was what I talked about, like in terms of who I am.
Yeah.
What sustained me was I took the job. I never saw myself as the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools. It wasn't something I saw for myself.
Right.
I don't even know if it was something I ever desired.
Sure.
But what I did see was, from the seat that I sat in, I was the executive superintendent of the Bronx when the pandemic hit. So many of the decisions that were made about adults and in service of adults.
Absolutely.
And I knew, as a kid who grew up in the South Side of everywhere, that somebody needed to be making decisions about me, about little Misha, about 9th grade Misha, 8th grade Misha, 7th grade Misha, third grade Misha. We needed somebody to be in that seat who would make decisions about young people. And as a person who spent my career leading in the Bronx, I knew that remote learning wasn't serving our students well. And you know, I just saw so many things and heard so many things. And when I was asked to take on the role, and you know, all of us were all in all these chat rooms about like what was happening across the city and the country, and I was like, am I gonna sit back and continue to be in the chat room and complain, or am I gonna step up?
That's right.
And I stepped up, and I stepped up for all of the people who stepped up for me when I needed them to, and I stepped up and was sustained by all of the people who believed in me,
Right.
and followed me and encouraged me and felt connected to my
Right.
leadership.
Right, right, right. And in speaking on leadership, I recall our former First Lady, Michelle Obama,
Our forever first lady.
our forever
honey.
First Lady, coined the phrase, leadership doesn't change you,
Yeah.
it reveals you.
Yes.
What was revealed about Dr. Meisha Porter during that time of leadership leading the New York City Department of Education?
You know, you said, like, I show up as my authentic self unapologetically. And even in that role I did, and what was revealed to me, like, we all mask up, even when we try not to. But what was revealed to me was that I didn't need to mask up. People needed me authentically as me.
Yeah.
And it gave me a power to like lean into that part of myself. The other thing, honestly, was like I said, I never looked for that role, wanted that role, or thought about the role, but I was able to do the damn role.
You
like
did
I
it.
did the damn thing.
Yes, you did.
And I did it. You know, the thing that also like drives me now is like, even this morning, I told you I was at a school this morning that invited me, wanted me to come for their like college walk. And even in those moments, people come up to me and thank me and thank me for what I did for the system in a time when people needed to see someone who looked like them, see someone who they connected with, and see someone who had had every role in the system, from student to teacher to AP principal, but had every role. And so everybody felt like they sat in the seat with me.
I want to talk about the word you use, connection, connectivity. And I think it is an attribute that is so underestimated.
Yes.
Why is connectivity so important, even in the classroom?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I mean, there are all these sayings, right? Like people don't learn from people they don't like or don't love them, right?
Sure.
Connectivity is about that. Connectivity is about seeing someone for who they are and believing in the power that comes from their authentic self, right? It comes from not like, how am I going to make Dr. Chase the Dr. Chase I want her to be? It's about seeing the fullness of Dr. Chase and being appreciative of that and just wanting to pull more of that out of her. And so you can be your greatest and best self. And so our students need it from us, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, I can't imagine. I know it happens to you because it happens to me. How many people see you or see me and are like, I never had a superintendent that looked like that,
right? You don't
Dressed
look
like that,
exactly.
with a hair like that,
Exactly.
put those earrings on, right?
All the
like,
time. That's right.
You know, and it connects them to people they see in their everyday life.
That's right.
And it then connects them to who they can be in the world.
That's correct.
And so those connections to our communities, to our teachers, to our leaders, but most importantly to our students, position them to see. I told you I didn't see myself as chancellor, but when I did it, I was like, it opened my mind about who I could be in the world, right? Like what my impact could be in the world. And I felt connections in that role from people. Black women come up to me all the time and say to me, sis, we were praying for you. And I say to them, I know. Because every time I went into a building, a sister would come up to me and whisper in my ear, we got you, we praying for you, we see you, we love you. I can't tell you how many times that happened. And you know, leaders need that too.
Absolutely.
I don't think people realized how much that fed me.
I understand that. I understand that. We don't look for the accolades.
Yes.
We're definitely not in it for the money.
That's right.
Right? But every once in a while, when someone offers you a prayer
Yes.
or says
Yes.
something impactful about something that you may have been responsible for, you say to yourself,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
someone was really paying attention.
And I went to a friend's for dinner. This is after I left the role. I'm at her house. She's a principal.
Okay.
Her neighbor's a principal.
Okay.
And her neighbor's mother watched me every time I was on TV.
Sure.
Watched what I wore. You know, the
Yes.
aunties be watching.
The aunties always watching.
Watched what I said,
That's
watched how I spoke,
Yes.
and was just so proud of me. And
Yes.
so she saw me go into my friend's house and called her and said, "Would Misha please just come say hi to my mother?" And I'm like, saying hi to your mother and getting a hug from your mother fills my whole soul.
Absolutely.
My whole soul. And, you know, we don't, for me, and I think it's very true for women, women lead differently.
Yes.
And our accolades really don't come from the money. They don't come from even the titles. They come from the people, because we lead from here first.
We do.
Right?
We do.
And so when a student, I see you, I watch you, sis, right? And I see the way you connect with young people. But when a student comes to you and makes a connection between a thing that you've made a priority and what they experience, that fills you differently.
Of course it does.
Right? Like when
it does.
when we see Sister Soups across the country making an impact, being sustained, or transitioning with their own story, it's sustaining, right? And there are all these ways in which women just lead and move differently, so that our feeling is really about what happens here for us, not here or here, but here first.
That is so true. It is so true. But I also want to make the point that when we look at public education today, 70% of our teachers are female.
Yes.
We are the mothers of the earth at
Yes,
the end of the day,
yes,
right?
yes.
We're natural nurturers. So it's a natural, I guess, progression to see, you know, women going into the role of teaching. But when we get into the role of leadership, that flips.
Yep.
About 22% female superintendents, female who are at senior level positions in leadership. Even more daunting when we get to women of color, Black women in particular. We're at 1.8% of that 22%. Why is that?
Well, again, it is about the way women lead, and it's about the way women see each other, themselves, right? I told you, I never saw myself as the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools, and yet I did the hell out of that job,
Yes,
right?
you did.
We have to start thinking about how we position ourselves, because our leadership is so important and so needed. The world is suffering because not enough women are leading across sectors, right? But in education in particular, the decisions that are often made don't lean into what communities need to be nurtured. And so we need women to do that, because women do that differently. And I think we don't, I was when I was a superintendent, I remember we had a conversation about men will go after a job whether they are qualified for it or not.
That is
right. Women don't. And that is not a negative. That is because we respect the roles and seats that we sit in, that we want to make sure that we sit in them in our fullness, right? And so we don't go after all of the roles that we probably should. So the error isn't not going after all of the roles. The error is not recognizing our power and potential. Right? Like the error is in not realizing that, you know, we are more than qualified and more than ready, and positioning ourselves. You know, you and I have talked a lot about, like, when I was Chancellor, I also had to sit in that seat, do that job really well, and think about what was next. I had to do both things.
Of course.
And I think women don't do that from the seats that they sit in often. Now, I was on a timeline, so it was different, right? Like mayoral control, election year, blah, 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 all of those political aspects of it. But we need to be sitting in seats, not thinking just about what we want to do now, but what we want to do next.
How do we create more pipelines for, right? Because this is important.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll be honest, men have the pipeline.
Yeah.
Men support other
Yeah.
men, whether they're qualified or
Or
not.
not. Yep. And
How do we create this for
we
women?
have to do it. We got to do it. We've been
We're
talking about
already
it,
doing
right?
it. We're
Right?
doing it, but how do we, you
Yeah.
and I, how do we, women who are watching, how do we expand that
Yeah.
pipeline so that other women will have the opportunities to lead and they're qualified to sit in those seats?
When I was chancellor, women across this country reached out to me. You, my local friend, my sister, Kaya Henderson, Janice Jackson, women I'd never met, Monica Goldstone,
That's right.
women I'd never met, saw where I was and what was going to happen and what was happening with me, and reached out to me to help me think that way, right? So I think the first thing we have to do is we have to connect with other women, right? We have to make sure we're connected.
Right.
The other thing we have to do is we have to develop women, because there's also this conversation of, men get in roles that they're not equipped for. And yet when we get in roles, we have to rise to this level that men don't have to. I'm okay with that. You know why? Because our children, our community, and our families deserve us to rise to the occasion and not be mediocre, because there may be some men that are in these positions that are mediocre. Our communities deserve us to show up in our fullness so that we can help them realize their potential like we're realizing ours. And so we have to mentor and develop women so that they are uniquely prepared for these roles, because the roles are also dangerous for women.
They're very
dangerous. And
dangerous.
they're particularly dangerous for Black women.
Yes, they are.
And so, we got to be super prepared.
Yes, they are.
And we have to have a network and a support system around
We have to have a network, a support system, but we also need, and we don't talk enough about this, is sponsorship.
Absolutely.
I sat on a panel a couple of weeks ago through NAPSI.
Yep.
It was a leading ladies panel.
Yep.
And one of the questions, the great Sharon Contreras, Guilford County Superintendent, former superintendent, who is also super fabulous. I'm sure you've, made contact with her during your travels. But we talked about mentorship.
Yeah.
And I brought up sponsorship.
Yep.
Because we could be mentored until we're blue in the face. But sponsorship is that person who will open up their network to you.
Yes.
Sponsorship is that person who will speak your names in rooms where you are not.
Yes.
Sponsorship will say, hey, sis, I need for you to come to this conference, come to this panel, come to this event, because there may be some people there that you need to meet.
Yeah. And it's about a pathway, right? I mean, I will tell you, in this job, in this work that I am now, right, like leading the Bronx Community Foundation, most of my time is fundraising.
Okay.
But most of that happens because someone put me in a room, in the right room at the right time at the right moment.
Someone put you in the room.
And that's what we have to do. Like, that's the sponsorship. The sponsorship is about creating a pathway to get sisters in the room. Where they can be seen, where somebody says, oh, I've heard your name. I've heard your name. And opens a door to an opportunity.
I will tell you, through my leadership journey, my sponsorships have been men.
Mine too.
Men who have said, I need you to sit at this particular table because this may be an opportunity for you. Or I see something in you and I'm going to bring you along and take you under my wings. I can think of the countless men. And there are women as well. Let me just be clear about it. But what is your take on men as allies to help elevate the female leadership?
Mine have been men too until I was chancellor. When I was chancellor, it was women. Because women recognized the moment that I was in. But I think that men are very important in elevating women, and elevating in women in a way that, so I teach classes at Fordham, at NYU, and I'm very intentional when I teach a class about centering the scholarship of people of color and bringing people of color who are leading into the room. And I do that intentionally because I want to normalize that we exist in scholarship.
Absolutely.
And men need to help normalize that women lead and lead exceptionally well. When we see, it pains me to watch the conversations about our sister at Harvard that's leading in this moment, right? men need to lift up their voices. Men of color in particular need to lift up their voices in support of our sister, Dr. Gay, right? Like that needs to happen. But it is a part of a process of normalizing the opposite of what's being normalized. And what's being normalized, I've been watching this conversation. I got an op-ed in my head about it. But what's been normalized is that a Black woman, and it's not just her, but she's been singled out in a lot of ways, but that a Black woman landed in a position by accident. Or landed in a position because of such a position, right? The president of Harvard University landed because of affirmative action. Well, we know that that's not the case,
No,
right?
completely
That doesn't
qualified.
That doesn't beyond qualified.
Beyond qualified.
Right? Because we are always beyond qualified, right? Like we have to be beyond qualified. And so men's jobs are to engage in that level of allyship that centers and normalizes women leaders as exceptional and a part of the conversation, and not simply as a token leader, but as understanding what women bring when we lead and what's important about this moment for women leadership.
Powerful. Just powerful. You know, there's a phrase that's attached to Eleanor Roosevelt. And the phrase pretty much sums up well-behaved women seldom make history. Dr. Porter, are you a well-behaved woman?
Child, Eleanor must
I
have
just
known
wanna know.
me.
And you know
She
what?
must
I
have
knew the
known
answer
me.
to that question, but I had to ask it.
I didn't even know this. Auntie Eleanor knew me like that. I know.
Are you a well-behaved woman?
Can I tell you what's funny about me? I never thought I'd be a superintendent either until after I finished years and years of principaling and I was ready to retire. And I was like, oh, and then I'm going to trick some district to hire me. They're going to pay me a lot of money. And then they're going to realize that she don't behave. And they're going to have to buy me out of my contract. No, I'm not a well-behaved woman, right? Like I am a I believe in good trouble.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
I believe in being an interrupter and a disruptor.
That's right.
Right? Like I believe, like my, I don't even know what a well-behaved woman is.
I don't know any well-behaved women
Exactly.
in leadership
Yeah.
roles today.
Yeah.
Not today. I don't know any of them.
Yeah. No,
Right?
we have to interrupt, disrupt, challenge systems.
That's right.
And
Push the envelope.
And we have to be okay with not being well behaved, even if it means you sit in a seat for a season and a moment.
And even if it means that you are disliked.
Child,
honey,
I am motivated by your lack of light. My mother, when I became, I have gotten a lot of love, like just a lot of love on my journey. And I would go home and talk to my mom, and she would be like, so how are you going to take on this role? And I'm like, Ma, everybody loves me. And she's like, everybody don't love you, girl. And, I've learned that.
Like, mama right.
Mama's right. She's like, everybody don't love you.
That's right.
And it's okay. You don't have to love me. You got to respect me. Yes. You don't have to love me.
Respect me.
And it's okay if you don't love me. It's even okay if you don't like me. It's not okay if you don't respect me. Right. And I think I also feel like this. People respect a leader who's a decision maker, who has a clear vision and a set of expectations, and they will follow you and they will get behind you even if they don't like you.
They respect consistency.
Yes.
They respect follow through.
Mm-hmm.
They respect that your word is your word, even if I don't like your word.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that is what has sustained you.
Yeah.
Is your authenticity.
Yeah. And misbehaving is fun.
Misbehaving is fun. And I love misbehaving with you too.
Me too.
Right?
Ooh,
girl. Okay, when these cameras I want to go back to your work that you're doing in the Bronx.
Yes.
Okay, so you are the president and you are the CEO of Bronx Community Foundation.
The Bronx Community Foundation, girl.
Talk to me about it.
Yeah.
What is that role all about?
I'm going to tell you.
You jumped from the chancellor seat to the CEO president for this foundation. What's the vision of this foundation? What is this all about?
Well, I'm going to tell you two things before I tell you the vision of the foundation. I'm going to tell you my why. When I was thinking about what I wanted to do next after I left New York City, the New York City Department of Education, I wanted to do work that was important to me, connected to me, and would impact change in my community. I live in the Bronx. I raised my family in the Bronx. Most of my career in education was in the Bronx. The Bronx made me.
That's right.
I would not be the chancellor. I would not have been the chancellor. I wouldn't be the CEO. I wouldn't be Dr. Meisha Porter if not for the Bronx and the people who believed in me there. And the thing that attracted me to the foundation was this idea of, one, community foundations are about place-based giving.
Okay.
And they are about centering the needs of community through this process called participatory grant making.
Okay.
So those who are most proximate to the problems are coming up with solutions and identifying where resources go to fund those solutions. And one of the things that is unique and special about the Bronx is the Bronx always raises up in service of the Bronx.
Of course.
Right? 2 presidents went to the Bronx. Right? Reagan went to the Bronx, Carter went to the Bronx. They went to tell the story of the Bronx's burning. After they left, the people was like, them dudes ain't gonna do nothing here. So let's rebuild our communities. Let's rebuild our neighborhoods. And that's been the story of the Bronx. The foundation is about interrupting systemic racism. It's about building community power. It's about investing in the borough that has experienced many levels of great disinvestment over generation. And it's about lifting the story of the Bronx, the one we know as Bronx girls, right? The one we know that made us. And so, you know, and people told me not to take this job. People told me this job was beneath me, that I was bigger than this job. And I had to say to myself, if I am too big to go back to the Bronx, then who does? Right? I live in the Bronx.
Say that one more time.
If I'm too big to go back to the Bronx, then who does?
That's right.
The other thing women do is our story of success is different than men.
100%.
That's why in my highest position in education, it wasn't men who helped me think about my next. It was women. Yeah. Because my success criteria was different than theirs. Yep. And so the foundation is my opportunity to get back in community, to bring a level of resources and investment to a community that deserves it, needs it, and support and fund projects that will, transform the borough. Everybody's been super hyper focused on the Bronx this year because of the 50th anniversary of hip hop, right?
Sure.
I am a hip hop head. I love hip hop all day, every day. Hip hop hasn't made the investment in the borough that created it that it deserves. Okay. The foundation is about bringing that investment to the Bronx.
Okay. All right. And you know what? You're the right person for that.
Thank you.
Your love for the Bronx, and you do not hide it, not one bit. When I first met you, the first thing we did, that's my Bronx sister, right? I'm from the BX, baby, yes, right? Yes. And we're made different.
Yep.
We love our Brooklyn nights and our Queens and our, Harlem nights, but we're made different in the Bronx. And you're right, the Bronx made us who we are today as leaders. And I really appreciate you giving back to the borough that raised me.
And it really feeds me. It feeds me, right? Like it is, yes, I definitely recognize that coming off this role, I had a certain level of power and influence that I could bring to the foundation. But like every success feeds me because you know what we know differently? A school leader become foundation leader knows this differently. We see possibilities because we've seen young people that no one ever imagined make it beyond their wildest dreams, beyond our wildest dreams. And so I know what's possible. I know what this foundation can, will be. And so it feeds me just as much as I feed it.
So you've had quite a career. What are we at? 20 somewhat years?
Child.
But you started when you were 6, baby.
Child.
Come on now.
I'm hip hop years old, You was there. You were there for it.
In your splendor. 50 years of Misha.
50 years of Misha.
I love that theme. I love that theme. But in your career, what would you say was your greatest accomplishment? And I know there were several.
Yeah.
But what is that one thing that stands out?
You know, it is, it's young people,
Yeah.
right? It is Felicia Simpson, who's a teacher in Yonkers now, who I won't tell a story of what happened with her and Latifah Slade outside my office door. She knows what happened. It is Jaquan Allen, who's in the music industry.
Say their name.
Doing his thing.
Yes.
It's Tamara Dews, who is
Say their
working
name.
internationally in London. You know, it is the young people who I've also remained connected to,
Sure.
right? It's Trisha Shepherd.
Say their name.
You know, it is my greatest accomplishment is Joshua Harris, who I ran into on White Plains Road, who's a realtor, and he didn't want to take AP English. I had to force him to because I knew he could do it, and he just didn't want to, right? Like, my accomplishments are in the young people whose lives are different because hopefully they saw that I saw something in them that they didn't see in themselves. That also happened for me. And so it's not singular, it's not a moment. It is every time. One of my students just reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and said, I'm so excited about what you're doing in the Bronx. Can I have lunch with you? Of course, let's do it. But you got to buy me a cocktail because I got gray hair that you're responsible for. So you got to buy me a cocktail. But that is my greatest accomplishment is what our young people are doing in this world as a result of having shared space with us.
But you mentioned individual names. Just know that your impact goes beyond those individual names. You've now positively impacted their family, the next generation.
Yeah.
Just from their interaction with you. That's success.
That is, listen, yesterday I was at a celebration for somebody who had been, had over a 55-year career in education at every level.
Wow.
And we had the same conversation about like, it's not just a one-on-one impact. It is a generation impact. It is a family cycle change impact. It is, and to me, that's the joy. The joy is in seeing young people thrive in ways that I don't know if I knew was possible when they were 12 and 11 in front of me or 15. But there was something I saw, right? Like there was something we all saw in them, and just watching their lives be amazing is just the greatest joy for me.
It is. And when we work in communities of color, marginalized communities, our work is harder.
Yeah.
Our work is different.
Yep.
What do you see as some of the greatest challenges of marginalized communities of color?
Yeah. Language.
Oh,
I'm going to tell you why. It's new right here for you, girlfriend.
Go ahead now.
Language. So we talk about marginalized communities.
Sure.
We talk about unhoused youth. We talk about food insecure communities. We talk about low literacy rates. We talk about them in a way in which positions the failure on people, not on us and on the
Deficit
system.
mindset. There we go.
And so it's language because we actually don't have unhoused youth. We have youth we fail to house. Right. We don't have underserved communities. We have communities we fail to serve. It's a part of a larger design. That's why when you say, am I well behaved? No, you can't be well behaved when you have to show up in service of. And so I think the problem is language, because when you approach a community that's marginalized, traditionally underserved, unhoused, like all of the the least healthy, blah, 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 then you have an excuse to not interrupt it. But when you recognize that there's a design behind all of that language that is rooted in systems that perpetuate, like the communities that are marginalized have been marginalized for generations. Where's the new marginalized community?
Sure.
Find me a new one. Like I want somebody to find me a new underserved community. I want a new one. I don't want the same old, right? And so it is generational. It's possible to shift generational curses and change it.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
How do you fix it? And I know you don't have the
No,
magic
it's not
wand.
a simple answer.
And I know it's
complex.
but your foundation is the
Absolutely.
beginning
Listen,
of fixing
it
things,
is
right?
about investment, right? Money matters. I don't care what people say, right? It's about investment, it's about ownership, and it's about proximity, right? So, one of the things I've learned about philanthropy is that people with money often want to solve a problem in the way in which they believe it should be solved. They don't talk to the people most impacted by the problem. And folks who live in a problem have ideas about solutions. They just don't necessarily have the resources to solve. And so investment matters, connecting matters, talking to people who are having a lived experience matters to help design solutions to problems. And so if you are in a marginalized community, you know, do do you experience that community? Because the Bronx is beautiful. It is, you know, so culturally diverse, so much richness that has changed the world has come out of the Bronx.
Absolutely.
We talk about 50 years of hip hop. The Bronx is responsible for hip hop, salsa, and bebop. Okay? We don't really know what bebop is because we're not old enough, but we know what it is, right? And so if you look from a deficit through a deficit lens at a community or at a school or at a person, then your responsibility to lift them up is not as great as if you look at the systems that created the deficit that you must begin to interrupt. And I would tell people, I had two jobs when I was superintendent, and I would say it now, to disrupt and dismantle systemic racism and the systemic racism that we participate in if we aren't intentional about disrupting.
What is your hope for the Bronx?
My hope for the Bronx, I don't have a hope. I have a reality for the Bronx,
Okay.
right? Like the reality for the Bronx Forward, the reality for the foundation is we're going to bring a level of investment into this borough never before seen. And we're going to do it not only with people who have a lot of money, but we're going to do it with people in and of community, because the investment is not only about a dollar, the investment is also about an idea.
It's a mindset.
We spent this summer talking to thousands of residents
Sure.
about what they wanted the foundation to be, about what they needed the foundation to be, and about how they saw philanthropy in the borough. And that's what's gonna grow us. The ideas of people, the resources. And so I am just excited about what we're gonna do together in community and about the level of investment that we're gonna bring to this borough.
How will this foundation impact public education in the Bronx?
You know, that's our happy space. We love school. I mean, we're going to develop an education agenda that's going to look at a few areas.
Sure.
We're going to look at leaders, and we're going to look at leaders through the lens of what it means to be a 21st century leader, right? And so we're going to build a fellowship that helps leaders leverage 21st century tools to actually do 21st century things.
Okay.
Because we want to use 21st century tools to do old things.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so we need to make sure that the Bronx is positioned and that our leaders are leveraging 21st century tools to help our young people do 21st century things. We also are going to be doing a lot of work to help build our teacher pipeline, looking at people in community.
Love it.
And so, you know, there are all these things that matter, right? Like they matter. I'm not being dismissive of the pipeline programs, Teach for America, Teaching Fellows, they matter. But they often go outside of our communities to look for people to build that teacher pipeline. And it's my supposition those people are there, they're school aides, they're paras, they're community school workers. And so we're going to work to build the pipeline from within.
That's amazing.
And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on building new educational opportunities. And so we are the lead community partner for the Bronx STEAM Center, and we're super excited about that, and building a campus along with many community partners that will allow for young people to have work-based learning experiences, hands-on learning experiences as a part of a larger campus. And we're partnering with Montefiore Einstein to do that, as well as our industry partners. So I'm excited about this moment in education where I get to define my role in it. And how do we, again, the other thing that's important is the foundation is going to position the Bronx as first.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's about time. About time. You know, the audience for the show Strictly Education is varied and vast. We're definitely going to have distribution widespread. So I'm going to ask you, well, let me, before I say that, I know for a fact that those who are watching are aspiring teachers,
Yeah.
aspiring administrators. They want to learn more about what is public education all about. What message might you give to an aspiring administrator?
I think what you lean, one, lead as your authentic self. People see fake, right? Like, so lead as your authentic self. The other thing is, I always tell people, aspiring administrators in particular, think you will, in all likelihood, be supervising the job you did last, right? So if you become an assistant principal, you're supervising teachers. You just had that job.
Right.
You become principal, you're supervising assistant principals and teachers. You had that job last. What would you need to be successful if you were supervising yourself? So I always really challenge people to think about the job you did last and what you would need from your leader.
What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started your leadership journey?
I wish I would have known that I think it starts with what we talked about with women. I wish I would have known what I could do.
Yeah.
I wish I would have like seen in myself what other people saw in me. Yeah, I think I would have been able to have a greater impact if I would have had more foresight of what I had the potential to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have an impact now.
Thank you.
You do. You have an impact now. If you could have a conversation with anyone, whether they're still with us on earth or they've passed on, who would that be and why?
Maya Angelou. I just, like, there is a grace and a leadership and a expertise and a power of thought that she carried from being a young woman to being an elder. And she had a style about her.
She sure did.
Like, she was unapologetic about
she was
her body,
unapologetic,
her voice.
Yes.
Right? And so
yes.
I am a huge admirer of Maya Angelou. And if I could have had a moment in a room with her, like this, oh my gosh, my life would have been, I think it just would have been amazing. That would just be amazing.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
And she is still impacting lives. Still impacting lives. You're amazing. No, seriously, you really are. I don't admire a lot of people.
You are just,
but you're on the list. I told him, I said, I'm not letting anybody else be the first. Because we had other people like, when we gonna go? I was like, nope, Misha's the first. I'll wait until January if I have to. I wanted you to be first.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And what I will say to you though is, like, even this, right? Like, allowing me to be first, and you talk about creating the network, right? Bringing people in. Thank you for bringing me in and continuing to lift up my story in this way. I really appreciate it.
You have a beautiful story to tell. You do. How did you get on the pathway to education? How did that start? Were you one of those kids who lined up your dolls on the bed? How in the world did you?
I was the other kid. So I got into education because when I was in high school, and middle school, I had to take my brothers to school every morning. And I was late to school. I was late to school, 9th grade, every day. And at some point, I stopped going to first period.
Okay.
First period was English.
Okay.
Midway through the semester, my English teacher found me and was like, I haven't seen you. What happened? Because she asked, we talked about connections, because she asked, I felt like she cared and really wanted to know the answer.
She did.
And I told her, I have to take my brothers to school every morning. I can't drop them off before this time. My mother can't do it. She's got to travel, right, 3 hours to get to work. And I was like, and so at some point I just decided to stop coming. And she said to me, this is what I want you to do. I want you to, whenever you get here, come. I don't care what time it is. And if you can't make it, I want you to come to my 5th period class. And I was willing to give up my lunch for my English teacher, Miss Hulack.
All right, Miss Hulack.
Because she cared enough to ask me why I wasn't coming. And so I did not have all of the students, dolls lined up to be in my class. I had a teacher who saw me. And I had a teacher who said when I wasn't there, she missed my voice. And that meant the world to me. And I wanted to be that for other young people.
Wow.
I wanted to see the Mishas. I didn't want to see and I've had amazing kids, like dope kids do amazing things. The valedictorians important, and I know that.
Correct.
But, for me, it's the kids that people don't see.
All the time.
Or the kids that I would tell people sometimes when I was a principal, you'd have never given me an opportunity because I would have never lived up to your standard. And Miss Hulack valued me, even though I wasn't the top of the class, even though I wasn't on time every day, even though I probably talked too much when I was there. And she made the things that were negative and seemed hard for me possible.
Man, so I can't help but to wonder, had it not been for Miss Hulack, where would Meisha Porter be?
Meisha Porter would still be somewhere talking. Meisha Porter would have been either a lawyer.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of passion for social justice issues and wanted to change the world. I didn't know how. A friend of mine from elementary school found a yearbook from where we were writing stories where I wrote, I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
I don't know why, because I don't like no blood. I wasn't healing nobody, so I don't know what I was thinking then. But the other thing I think I would be is I'd be you. I'd be sitting in that chair right now. I love to lift up people's stories. And so another one of my idols is Robin Roberts, because I think she does the thing the way she does the thing as her authentic self. And so, I could see myself, talking to people, sharing people's stories, lifting up the stories of people that we don't get to hear. And what's funny is that's what I do in my work.
Yes.
But I would probably, the thing I did do in school was, remember when we were in school and they would make us do current events?
Oh, yeah.
And you had to present it?
Absolutely, every week.
Child, I was the Robin Roberts of current events girl. Honey, I could tell a story. So I think if I would have understood multiple pathways, but in my mind it was teacher or lawyer.
Okay. So a note about Robin Roberts, she is the real deal. I met her on an airplane.
Wow.
And she was so authentic and so real and so approachable. I will never forget my experience with her. She was just an amazing person. So you picked the right one.
I feel that about her.
No,
she's
it's
my
real.
friend in my mind.
She is all of our friends.
She's my friend,
she
right?
is.
I want to know what you would be doing differently if you weren't in education. I want to know that you're
So what's interesting, and this is how I know I'm super connected to you. I went to college to be a news reporter.
Wow.
I would be doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
I love it.
I wanted to be a news reporter. I went to Norfolk State University. I graduated with public affairs and public relations degree. Never really used it until I became a superintendent and realized how important it is to understand public relations, how to understand public affairs, right? But this was always a dream of mine, to elevate voices, to bring powerful men and women to the forefront to help solve the challenges of the world, but to do that through media. And I can't believe that at 30 years in my career, I'm finally doing that thing that I wanted to do. And I fell into education by accident. Because I got a job immediately out of college. It didn't really give me the desire and the burn in the belly that I was looking for. And I decided to quit. You're 21 years old, you're doing crazy stuff. So I decided to just quit my job. And I was like, wait a minute, I ain't got no money. What am I doing here? A good friend of the family who was a teacher in District 9 said to me, why don't you go into a classroom and substitute for a while? You have your degree. And just substitute until you can figure it out. I went into the class. Remember the red roll book?
Mm-hmm.
The red roll book, the Delaney book. You remember that?
Yes.
And a piece of chalk. I fell in love within 15 minutes and haven't looked back. I found my passion. But I get to use what I thought I would become in the work that I was assigned to do.
But so much a part of like your job is about communicating a vision
100%.
and like all of those
But
skills.
it's also telling a story.
Yes.
It's telling a story of a school district, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, as superintendents, we are informing the community all the time through multiple modalities of what's happening in the school district. Scores, you know, projects, you know, initiatives, what we're doing instructionally, so many things, athletics, the arts. We are constantly communicating. And so I get to use that passion that I had as a little Tahira in this position as adult Tahira. Dr. Porter,
Dr. Chase,
I want to thank you so much for being a part of our inaugural show. I could not have thought of a better guest.
thank you.
And I purposely waited until you were the first guest because that is how I feel about you. You are powerful, you are strong, you are authentic, you are the real deal. And it has been a pleasure just having a conversation with you and helping the audience of Strictly Education learn a little bit more about Dr. Meisha Porter. We know that there's so much more to come. I don't want you to reveal it here, but if you want to, you can. But I know that there's so much more to come to Dr. Porter because, honey, you've got so much left in you.
Yes.
You've got about 50 more years
Girl.
of work to do, but the work is needed, and the nation needs leaders like you.
Thank you.
So keep doing what you're doing and just know that I am speaking on behalf of probably every woman I know. We admire you, we appreciate you, and we congratulate you for all that you have done and continue to do. Thank you for being a guest here.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to be in this moment with you. It is such a privilege and an honor for me.
I adore you. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you for watching the first episode of Strictly Education with Dr. Tahira. You heard from Dr. Meisha Porter, former Chancellor of New York City Department of Education and current CEO and President of Bronx Community Foundation. She definitely shared some pearls of wisdom in this episode. What struck out for me was the conversation about using our voice. So I'd like to just share with you some Tahira takeaways. Let's just call this segment Tahira's Takeaways. Have you ever heard the saying, well-behaved women never made history? Well, that was a statement that was coined by Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, I'm here to tell you that this isn't just a catchy phrase. It's actually a mantra for success in education and in life. Oftentimes, we talk about dreaming big. We talk about letting our passion guide us. But dreams alone will not take you far if you don't have the courage to leverage your voice and speak up. Think back to your days in school. I don't know, elementary school, maybe even middle school. Were you the student who always had questions? Who wasn't afraid to raise your hand, even if you weren't sure of the answer? Or were you the one who sat quietly, afraid to draw attention to yourself? Now, fast forward to your career as an educator, whether you are a teacher, whether you are an administrator. Are you still that quiet, reserved person who hesitates to speak up? Or have you found your voice? You see, finding your voice helps you to advocate not only for yourself, but for others. I know an extraordinary educator. We just met her, Dr. Porter, who knows the power of using her voice. She understands that silence rarely leads to progress. She's just not the former chancellor. She's just not the CEO and president of the foundation. She's a trailblazer who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo, who isn't afraid to say what needs to be said, as you heard from this interview. For so long, women have historically been silenced and overlooked. But what I know is that there are many successful women who leveraged their voice, who did not behave well, and they made change. They made a lasting impact on education, very similar to Dr. Porter. But this isn't just about being loud for the sake of being loud. This is about effective communication. This is about leveraging your voice. This is about expressing your ideas and opinions confidently and persuasively. This is about using your voice and making it heard to drive positive change. When you use your voice, when you speak up for what is right, you will realize that your voice is your most potent weapon in your journey towards success as an educator. So, audience, are you ready to break free from the shackles of silence? Are you ready to unleash the power of your voice and make your mark in the world of education? I suggest that you get ready. It is time to speak up and make history. Our students need us. Thank you for watching Strictly Education. I look forward to seeing you at our next episode.